talk this.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your 10 minutes in 7 seconds host, Madelyn.
I'm the Pokemon only ever see me in the evening host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. It's Emma's side quest, so it's time to find out what she chose. What are we talking about this week?
This week I wanted to talk about, time systems in games. More specifically, things that have to do with, time passing, I guess.
And, distinguish that for us a little bit. What does that mean?
Well, this was inspired because I've been playing Pokopia, and one of the
humble brag there. Humble brag from our Switch 2 owner.
I'm now a Switch 2 owner, yes. And one of the, only points of debate on that game, is it does make use of some real-time, or real clock. What do they call, what is it? What's the official thing?
Maybe system clock?
System clock. It syncs to your real-life time, essentially. So this corresponds to, the time of day it is while you're playing Pokopia, as well as there's some building projects that take, a real amount of time. So you have to come back to them when they complete. And then there are also games that attempt to, simulate real time by, sort of shrinking the size of a day. So, there's a day-night cycle, perhaps, but it's not corresponding to your actual day-night cycle. It's corresponding to some ratio.
Yeah, compressed version.
Cycle.
Yeah. And if you have thought at all about Animal Crossing or any type of game like this, Pokopia, you will know that gamers don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
Gamers don't like to be told, come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is time traveling? I've mostly been following Pokopia through, let's get this place humid. But I assume time traveling has become a large part of gameplay in the community.
So yeah, from my perspective, there's, unlike when, you start New Horizons, for example.
Yeah.
For the first, 4 days of New Horizons, it's here's the discrete task you have for the day, and now you have nothing to do. And you just have to turn it off and come back.
Yeah.
Pokopia, even when there's, okay, this task will be done tomorrow, you can have, 5 to 10 other things that you can already be doing by the time you hit any sort of real time gate. So I do think there are people who are, particularly speeding through the game, and once you get to a point where I think you're really just trying to, make a pretty environment and you want to have a bunch of building projects going on, that's probably where time travel comes in. But in terms of progressing the story, unless you're really trying to rush it, there's really no reason to. But definitely still is a thing that people are doing. I just never wanted to mess with my system clock like that. Seems like a hassle. So
yeah, it's never been something that I've done. That didn't bother me ever about Animal Crossing either, to be honest. I don't know. It's just...
I only remember it with New Horizons, although I don't have clear memories of the beginning of the DS Animal Crossings. But I do remember being this is really slow to get started, right?
I don't know. I guess at the time that it's so hard, of course, to separate Animal Crossing from the time in which we were all starting it, right? And so, I was weirdly busy at work during that time to a certain extent. And also, I own, can you believe this, more than one video game. So Animal Crossing having a slow start, I don't remember bothering me in any meaningful way. I just played something else, or I did my job.
Well, I think with something like Animal Crossing, one, New Horizons was a new one after a very long time.
True.
Two, it was COVID.
Yep.
And this was going to be some people's game.
Yep.
which fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
And 3, in comparison to when like the DS Animal Crossings were coming out, which I don't think there was even one for the 3DS. I think they were
just the DS
games.
Wild World.
There wasn't streaming the way there is now.
Not in the same way at all.
And so if you're streaming Animal Crossing on launch and you hit the hard time gate after about an hour and a half, you probably have to do something about that. And then if you're not a streamer, you see these people who you watch getting like so far ahead of you, right? And so there's sort of becomes a pressure to also time travel so that you can keep up with like the zeitgeist of Animal Crossing conversation.
Which is so antithetical to their hopes for that game.
I did see you put some quotes on Animal Crossing about how part of like introducing the crafting and terraforming systems was a way to give players something to do while they were time gated, which unfortunately those systems also sucked. So just in my opinion,
yeah.
But
the crafting system was in itself kind of a time-based, because you literally had to take the amount of time it would take you to build a hammer.
Yeah.
To do it.
But I did think it was interesting that they were thinking about that, and that's part of how that design sort of came around.
Well, yeah, the Animal Crossing developers are under no illusions that you are out there time traveling, right? Mm-hmm. They know about it. They're not ignorant of it. And, like, intentionally, you know, and this is an interview in the Washington Post with a couple of the lead designers, and they talk about that. They're like, okay, we know you're doing this. Okay, we think you probably shouldn't. Mm-hmm. But, like, okay, we get it. And notably, right, the Animal Crossing does not really punish you for time traveling in a way that it could, right? It doesn't punish you the way it used to punish
you for not saving.
Right, exactly. It's like, oh, it's not like jump scare nightmares for weeks Rossetti for when you didn't save.
Okay, like, sorry, this is off topic, but do you think that like the people who just have like one save versus the people who rotate at least like 5 saves, do you think the common differential is whether they were jump scared by Rossetti at some point in their lives?
It's a good question.
Can we do an experiment? A survey?
We need a survey. If you were a loved one or terrified by Rossetti.
Anyway, go on.
You may be entitled to multiple save files. But yes, it was interesting to read about how... So one thing that can be challenging about these truly real-time progression games, so things like Animal Crossing, things like Harvest Moon, things like Cozy Grove, which I will draw an Animal Crossing contrast to shortly, or even things like Pokemon, right, where certain events happen at certain times of day. Of course, the argument against this, or the dislike that some players may have of this, in reference to Emma's greeting of this episode, right, is people don't play games in an evenly dispersed period of time across the day or week for the most part, unless you're a streamer, I guess. You know, people are mostly playing games when they have free time, which for those of us with jobs that have any kind of standard schedule, whatever that is probably going to be clustered around the same time of day. So, like, it was interesting to read about how the Animal Crossing developers are also aware of that. So, like, you know, not only was the terraforming or the, like all of that stuff is meant to say, hey, we know that some of you are playing at 2 a.m., and that might be a boring time to play Animal Crossing. So, like, we've given you some stuff to do, and there's crafting you can do, and, like, you don't have to wait for Nook to be open. So it was cool to see them thinking about the ways to account for that. But also, I feel like they didn't, like, have they rolled out ordinances for this one? I think they have, right?
I think they have, but they're not drastic.
Right. You can't say my villagers are only going to be up at night.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, they don't punish you for it other than rotting your turnips or growing some weeds.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, over in Spooky Cozy Grove, right? Which you played that one too, right? Some of it?
No, I think I just watched you.
Okay. I played Cozy Grove, which is like spooky dead things, Animal Crossing with I think they've built it out a lot since I played it, but like much more limited kind of stuff when I was playing, but much more story progression. That team is like, at least when I was playing, the company line was like, okay, I guess you can time travel, but if you screw up your save, we better not hear about it.
Yeah.
Like, we're too small of a team to deal with you nincompoops. You better time travel forward and only forward, because if you time travel back, it's going to ask you to get the silver shovel when you already have the gold shovel, and there's not going to be anything you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was a respectable line. They do seem to now have rolled out a patch where they're like, okay, if the game sees you've gone backwards, it will kind of like force the clock forward. But it is sort of, it was interesting to read the two like FAQs about this from different times, because, you know, it sort of sucks. It sort of sucks, right, for a small team building something like this to be like, okay, I have to take extra time and extra money and extra resources to build a system for people who are playing the game in a way that we really didn't intend, that is like actively against the ethos of how we want them to play this game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine for like a company like Nintendo, I guess. But like, it was both really interesting to read about how they made it so the game wouldn't like screw itself up if you do that, and also the like palpable disappointment in you for forcing them to do that.
There's also like the difference in support expectations, right? Like, interestingly, like conversely, Nintendo is probably more capable of helping you with a corrupted save based on their resources, but also probably less likely to respond, less reachable. Versus a small team like the one working on Cozy Grove, who probably don't have time to help you with your corrupted save because they're busy, but are much more reachable than Nintendo, and so might get players asking them to do that anyway.
Well, and it's interesting to me that in this frequently asked question about what happens to your game if you time travel backwards intentionally or by mistake, they walk through, they say, okay, we really considered two approaches to this, right? The easy one would have been if the game, because like the game knows what time it was when you last played, like it tracks that. Animal Crossing is also tracking that, right? Any of these games sort of know, quote unquote, when you've time traveled, even if the game doesn't like acknowledge it, right? So they say, okay, the easy way to fix this would have been if the game detects that you're like in the past from when you last played, that it puts up a menu and it says, stop, we won't let you play until you've changed your date to at least this, right? And that probably would have been easier, but they said, we don't like that, it stops players from playing, we want you to be able to play the game. So instead, they set up like a really complicated system, it sounds like, where it like sort of forces the game clock forward, even if it shouldn't. And where like they were also like, but it doesn't do it if it's within 36 hours because like maybe you're just traveling, and all of the weird little things they had to think of just to account for these knuckleheads who like can't appreciate that some games are meant to be played not for 5 hours at a time. That said, I think the moral panic that sometimes is around time traveling is also bad.
Oh yeah, I don't care when people do it. That's their own prerogative. I do think the only annoying thing is if you want to be building have a community of people talking about this game, and a bunch of people are time traveling and getting ahead of where everyone else is. So I can see how it's like sort of a conversation stifler if you're in a group that talks about games, for example.
Yeah.
But still, like, split your group off into time travelers and non-time travelers or something. Right? There's things you can do to mitigate that, but.
Well, and it worked out in Animal Crossing's favor, I think, whether or not this was an intentional mitigation against time traveling, or more likely, the content just wasn't done. But for the first year, at least, the seasonal events were not like in the game.
Yeah.
So you couldn't time travel to Halloween and experience Halloween in April. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
So that did help somewhat with, although you could get really ahead on your Nook store or whatever, there were at least still some moments of joy and togetherness.
Yeah. Although the new Animal Crossing also just had less seasonal events than previous ones, which was a bummer. Because one of the favorite things I do have about real-time clock systems is, like, seasonal events.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I really loved doing, like, the garden competition in New Leaf, which was, like, at a discrete time of year every year. Or, you know, there was, like, seeing fireworks on New Year's Eve in Animal Crossing or whatever. So there were holiday things as well as, like, just things built into the game that were, like, events that happened at certain times. And Pokemon did this also. There was, like, bug catching contests on certain days of the week, for example.
There's some wild time-based stuff, both from games that I've played and have not played in Pokemon, to be honest. So time appears for the first time in Pokemon Generation 2, which I remember. So we're old. And yes, fond memories of the thrice-a-week bug-catching contest. You had to be there at a certain time and catch bugs. But in reading about all the different time-based events, truly wild now to think about a game saying, oh, there's 2 regions in the game, but you can only travel between them on certain days of the week. What? That would never fly now.
Was there times, like, when the boat would leave?
That's what it was, yes.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Like, the boat only leaves from Kanto to Johto and vice versa twice a week.
Yeah.
Which, like, cool. That's kind of cool and realistic, but also, like, huh? Notably also, and, like, something I've read about in the context of various glitches in these games before, right? Like, the time systems in these older games, like, didn't used to, like, talk to the system clock, really. It was, you'd set the game clock in the game, and it was really the battery in the game that kept the clock running. So, like, all of this clock-based stuff in, like, Pokemon Gold Silver, Pokemon Ruby Sapphire, or whatever now, like, more or less doesn't work. Even if you have an original cartridge. Because those batteries are dead. Even if you haven't used them, they just only have so long of a useful life. And so, like, you know, you can't grow big. You can't really play Gold and Silver, like, at all now, because that save state was reliant on the battery. And Ruby Sapphire, I think you can save without the battery, but, like, berries won't grow at all. But a bunch of, like, other weird time things that I didn't remember or didn't know, which is that Gen 5 had seasons that changed every month, which is, I don't know. Something about having to be like, oh, this Pokemon doesn't appear until 3 months from now in that particular type of game. It doesn't vibe with me the same way as the bugs in Animal Crossing.
Sure.
And then apparently in Moon and Ultra Moon, the game clock is intentionally offset from yours by 12 hours.
Yeah, I think that's cute.
It is cute, but also, like...
Well, because there's Sun and Ultra Sun, too.
Right.
That are set to normal.
But kind of ironic if you're someone who often plays at night.
True.
Because your Ultra Moon experience will be sunnier than your Pokemon Sun experience.
Fair enough, yeah.
So then Arceus is the first one that has run in the kind of miniaturized time version. And then I thought it was cool that in Scarlet and Violet, the different kind of regions within the game have time zones. Which is such an odd little touch in a game where the days take less than an hour.
Yeah.
And my final little tidbit is that in some generations, there are certain types of trainers that will only fight you at certain types of days. So, like, joggers will only fight you in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. But across several generations, I thought it was very funny that the policeman trainers will only fight you at night. I understand what they're saying is they're off the clock, I guess. Or maybe they're on the clock? I don't know. But
You're right. Is Pokemon battles part of being a policeman in the Pokemon universe?
Right. Is this like...
I mean, probably they do have, like, police Pokemon.
Sure, like canines.
They have police dogs. Yeah.
I know, but is the idea that they are doing their Police, their Officer Jenny jobs at night, and that's when they work, and that's the only time you can battle them? Or is the idea that they are doing some, like, off-work hours dogfighting or beating up of child trainers? Like, hard to know.
Hard to know. But anyway, I have played some of Pokopia during the daytime on the weekends. But part of the issue with, like, if you only play in the evenings is, like, one, certain Pokemon only appear at certain times of day.
Yeah.
So...
Which has always been the case.
Yes, but that's one thing if you're trying to complete the Pokedex, and that it does require you to play at just different times of day and, like, stake out various habitats, I guess.
Yeah, I guess there's no trading option in Pokopia, huh?
What?
I guess there's no trading option in Pokopia, huh?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I don't think so.
That would be unethical. You're a Pokemon.
But you have a Pokedex, so... Although they're not, like, living. I wonder if you can, like... walk a Pokemon. Oh, I don't walk a Pokemon to another Ditto's, like, island or whatever.
Here's the thing. It's one thing to keep a Pokédex, like a little record of your Pokemon friends. You don't own them. It's another thing for you, a Pokemon, to trade another member of your species.
Listen, I do force them to move house pretty frequently, so...
Sure. Landlord behavior isn't great either, but it's not like Pokemon slave trade.
Occasionally I suck up the water around all the hydrated flower beds, and it breaks the habitat for about half a second and dehomes like 5 Pokemon. And that's a real story. So, like, sometimes that happens.
That's happening right now in an apartment building I almost moved to. It's too cold, there was no water. But also, earlier this year, there was, like, gushing water everywhere. And I'm glad I didn't win that housing lottery.
But anyway, there's also, just a different sense of mood at different times of day.
Yeah.
So there's different music remixes, there's different sort of vibes going on. You can either see, if you set up a bunch of streetlights, you can see those lit up at night versus, not during the day. So it is like you do miss out a little bit if you are unable to play a game at anything but, like, the same time of day when it has a real-time system like this.
Thus encouraging players to time travel. I wonder if there are any, like, real glitches that can happen in Pokopia if you go the wrong way or too far.
I don't know, but there's an event going on right now that is at least built into the game. So technically you can time travel in and out of that event if you so desire to. I have heard. So it does not, at least for this one, I don't know if they'll add more if there's more already built in, but at least they're not fully going for the Animal Crossing approach in this one.
Well, there are a lot of other games also that, the whole idle game genre and also, like, idle game mechanics are to a certain extent built around the idea of real-time passing.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that creep into, like, you put The World Ends With You in here, and I was like, oh yeah, I think there's another game I played with this habit, and I think I'm just thinking of The World Ends With You.
Apparently they also do this in Bravely Default.
Yeah.
Which in those games, for The World Ends With You, I don't know how long it goes up to in Bravely Default, but essentially if you don't play the game for a period of time, or have your DS in, like, sleep mode for a period of time, you earn, like, special experience. So in The World Ends With You, you earn pin points that level up your currently equipped pins up to 7 days worth of time, with diminishing returns over time. But it does encourage you, if you're trying to level up your pins fast, it can be just as effective to just not play it for like 2 days as it is to like do a bunch of grinding or something.
Which is an interesting juxtaposition to the, it's a game very much about discrete periods of time passing. I don't really know what the message of that would be, but it's certainly about time.
Well, I think that in The World Ends With You's case, it's encouraging you as a person to go out and experience the world.
True.
Which is sort of the ultimate message that game is trying to convey. It does not actually want you to lock yourself up in your room playing The World Ends With You nonstop. It wants you to go out and do things and do other things.
You're saying it doesn't want me to like time travel to level up my pins while I sit and play for 12 hours straight?
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Mm-hmm. The DS, of course, every game on the DS also had the, various spot pass worked in, which also was encouraging you to actually go out places and do things.
Oh, I'm looking at your notes. I had forgotten about the Metal Gear boss.
Yeah.
That will just pass away.
Yeah, the one other funny example of like just turning the game off for a while is there's a boss called The End. He's really old in Metal Gear Solid 3. And if you do you encounter him and start the boss fight. And if you're playing it normally, this is like a really stealth-based, like intense sniper type fight. But you can also just turn off the game for a week. And when you come back, he will have died of old age.
Really funny. There should be more gags like that. There are a lot of those, not a lot, there are some of those kind of gag-based trophies in some games, although I'm sure with like Platinum Hunters galore, people hate those. But like
I'm sure you can time travel for those probably.
That's true.
As well.
The Stanley Parable, well, for one of the Stanley Parable ones you cannot. So there's sort of two funny time-based trophies for I think it's the Ultra Deluxe Edition. So there's one where you have to wait 10 years, like don't play for 10 years. Obviously, that's mostly accomplished by time traveling. But there's also a trophy that's accomplished by playing 24 hours on a Tuesday, which you cannot do through time traveling. Your game has to run. So all of that very in keeping with the humor of the game, obviously. And like lots of other trophies that reward you for playtime or a certain amount of time played at once or that kind of thing. But those ones are quite funny. Mad funny, some might say.
Mad funny. We also talked about Baten Kaitos last year at some point. And those games have a time-based system where your items slowly turn into other items. So like your milk can kind of curdle into cheese and various types of food can expire. And to get the platinum on that, you essentially have to wait a really long time to be able to get all the various different items. So the speed run for Baten Kaitos is like months.
More fermentation in games. More games with microbiomes.
I do think that one's really funny. I was looking for like a quick way to remind myself of this, and there was like a game fact thread that was like, what healing items stay?
Yeah.
What healing items don't go away after a while? Apparently chestnuts are pretty good. Don't spoil.
Makes sense. Bury them in the ground. A bunch of games, like if a game is going to have some kind of real-time based thing, it will be a farming element.
Yeah.
They have it in Yakuza. In the recent ones, you called out Nier as having a farming system, the Pokemon Berries system. I feel like the Baten Kaitos is sort of a offshoot of farming, right? Not too many games have intense versions of real time, but if they're gonna have anything, it's something will grow.
Yeah.
Before we move to like I think as you wisely pointed out, Emma, scheduled games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about a couple of other real-time examples. One, Nintendogs. Nothing else to say about it.
True.
Although it does allow me to note that these kind of like very like genuinely based in actual world time games, you almost exclusively see in either like the casual cozy genre or in a game that is on a handheld or like in whatever you would consider the Nintendo Switch system.
Yeah. I'm excited to be, put down Pocopia and replace it with Tomodachi Life.
Yes.
Which will also be, I think, real-time based. So.
Exactly. A little rotation of those games. There's also, of course, things like, Microsoft Flight Simulator, or a lot of racing games have systems that track real time and what things would look like for sort of the aesthetic of it all. And then also a couple of like lesser known games that I encountered. I thought The Longing was like a really fascinating concept.
Yeah.
Which is this game that came out. It came out also right at the beginning of the pandemic. So fascinating time to release a game that's about waiting for 400 mostly real-time days.
Yeah.
Right? Like what did he know? What did this guy know? Anyway, it's a game about a shade who is sort of watching over a slumbering king, and he has to wait 400 days for this king to awaken. And you can make the time pass faster by doing various activities, and there are multiple endings where you can decide to kill yourself or try to leave or just chill and wait for the king to wake up. But it was interesting to read both about the challenges of playtesting a game that is about playing over an extended period of time, and specifically about the challenges of playtesting pacing, which I think is interesting to think about in the context of many of the complaints about Animal Crossing too. How do you adequately figure out pacing for something that's going to happen over the course of a year?
Yeah.
And also where you can't trust players not to mess with
QA
the time.
probably does a lot of time traveling.
What?
QA probably does a lot of time traveling.
Oh, yes. They have to.
Yep.
They must. And the developer of this game said in some kind of interview that he felt like games were the only media or artistic medium that could play with time in the way that these durational games do, which was an interesting point I had not really considered, despite my penchant on this show for comparing games to other entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's tricks you can do in, visual media and in books. Holding on a still shot for a really long time, for example, or inserting a lot of blank pages in part of your book. Mm-hmm. I also think that you could probably, with like variable time stuff, just because it is live, you could probably do some sort of improv stage show experimental thing that plays with it also. But yes, in terms of ease and variety, I think that games are the medium that can play with this the most.
I mean, what also comes to mind is something like, in a slightly different way, is something like Big Brother, right? Where there's the show, but
that is kind of a game as well.
That's true. That is actually true. Where you can watch them for 24 hours, even if the show is only, 1 hour or that kind of thing. I feel like I had... Oh, and of course there are also, like, durational, both theater and more performance art, I guess, performances, right? 24-hour long, like, theatrical performances. Not my former employer, but, like, actually genuinely 24-hour long theatrical performances are, like, a semi-regular thing. Mm-hmm. Or even the sort of hot trend in New York now for it to be like, this play is 8 hours long and there's going to be 2 intermissions and a dinner break, is in some sense playing with this. But then also there's like stuff like it's The Artist is Present, right, where she like sat there for ever and her lover showed up or whatever it is, right? The viral video now. Or I saw one recently that was about somebody who's like bed rotting in public for like a week, right? I guess there is some kind of performance arty type things that play with duration, but agreed that it is much easier to a certain extent in games to consider what an experience looks like over an extended period of time, or in playing with experiences at different times.
And there are also like real-time TV shows. I was just reminded of this. There's like The Pit right now is really hot.
That's true. Like 24.
And 24, yeah. Or anything that tries to do like a oneer, right?
Yeah.
Is playing with your sense of time. So there's stuff you can do. But in terms of variety,
yeah,
I think games and interactive experiences like that.
Yeah. I also encountered the game series. There were like 8 of these that got released in 2 years and then basically never again, called Lifeline, all of which are sort of based around the idea that you're texting with some character, you're communicating by text with some character who's not there. So in the first one, it's an astronaut, and they take real amounts of time to respond to you, or they go to sleep, or that sort of thing. And reading about that, I felt like it was such a natural thing to make a game about, that I was surprised there aren't more of these. And then I thought about like how much we as a society hate waiting for people to text us back. And maybe that's why we don't do this.
Yeah, so the other type of game that we talked about is games where time is passing, but on some sort of compressed scale, or not tied to your actual time passing in the same way. Of which there's, a variety in terms of how much they play into like specifically what time it is versus like times of day. Right? Like it's pretty common for games to have like a day-night cycle in which certain things happen during the day and certain things happen at night, right? And not too much beyond that. Like Minecraft, you're safe during the day, monsters spawn at night if you don't get yourself a light. Final Fantasy 15, technically you can be out at night, but there's way stronger monsters that'll kill you if you are, so you're supposed to go camp or go to a hotel or something. Other things like that, where basically the idea is it's like scarier at night.
Yeah.
Right? Overall. And then there's games that get more in depth into like at the specific time certain things are happening, at the specific time certain things are happening, so you better be there, stupid. Which includes anything that's sort of like you're simulating some sort of life, so like Stardew Valley or Shenmue, or anything where NPCs are like doing their own thing at certain times, right? And you have to be home by a certain time.
Yeah. So that's one branch of it. I think there's a distinction in this subcategory between, yes, games like Stardew Valley or Shenmue, maybe? I don't really remember how Shenmue works. I mean, other than it being, this is happening. But games where there's not like a specific endpoint, right? Shenmue.
I do think Shenmue has an endpoint.
Sorry. I guess I mean...
But yes, kind of.
Games where... well, my other branch of games is the Majoravanias, which is like, right. You have 3 days to figure this out, or you have 12 minutes to save James McAvoy, or that's not what happens in 12 minutes.
It's Daisy Ridley. Save Daisy Ridley.
Sorry, thanks.
James McAvoy saves Daisy Ridley.
Maybe. Or you have 1 minute in Minute, or like these games where it's like, there's a time limit.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, of course, the actual real-time games are like like arcade games where you get however much per coin.
Yeah.
Right? But yes, a branch between the Stardew Valleys where you have this time system, but you can play sort of semi-indefinitely, right? And games where the whole point is you've got a really limited amount of time and you better go, go, go. And maybe Shenmue is like a little bit in between those things.
Yeah. I don't think there's a time limit on Shenmue.
Yeah.
I just think that you can reach the end of the story.
Yeah.
But you can do a lot of other things also.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Majora's Mask, which we've probably talked about before, and you're probably at least semi-familiar with if you're listening to a video game podcast.
Yep.
You're in like a time loop scenario, and during these time loops you can investigate different things on how to stop the moon from falling, essentially. And so you can complete various quests that give you like permanent upgrades. So it is kind of a Vania.
Yeah.
Or kind of a Vania in a way, kind of, or a roguelite, you know.
What a take.
Just kidding. Anything can be a roguelite if you try hard enough.
Yeah.
But all the various NPCs have like their own schedules that they keep to during those 3 days. And if you're not interfering with them, they'll be doing the same thing every time over those 3 days, right?
Yeah.
So you're supposed to like sort of learn their patterns and their schedules so that you can make use of that to fulfill various quests. There's also things in that with like, if you hold on to an egg, it'll hatch eventually, right? Those sorts of item changing, time-based things. And then of course there's not anything I feel like quite like exactly like Majora's Mask that like combines. Well, I guess 12 minutes is probably the closest one.
I think Outer Wilds is not dissimilar.
Yeah,
either.
That's fair. Outer Wilds too. There's also like Lightning Returns, which is sort of like in between. You have more time than in Majora's Mask, and also like you have to be, but it has that same like you have to be in certain places, right, to progress quests. Like NPCs are at certain places at certain times, and you have to go see them. But your time limit on that, and there's no time loop in that. You just have like a 7-day time limit.
Yeah.
To do whatever you're gonna do.
Well, I wished I was looking for this show. I wanted to be able to read more about, and maybe I just couldn't figure out the right search terms, so I should have asked the librarian to help me. But I was only able to find a little bit of discussion about what went into thinking about in these games where time is passing at this accelerated rate. Like, how do you decide what that rate is?
Yeah.
Because that's a really crucial element of what your game feels like. And the only discussion I could find about it was in reference to Stardew Valley in its like early days in 2016, where there was like some comments from Concerned Ape after a live stream, I guess, where basically he said, okay, in the live stream I had it where it was like 10 minutes in the game passed in 5 seconds, and I decided that should actually be 7 seconds. And there's still a lot of like griping from players about how fast time passes in Stardew Valley. I know the game stresses you out partially for that reason. And you know, he talks in these comments about like, you know, he knows that there's some desire for things to pass even faster, but in Harvest Moon it was 5 seconds to 10 minutes, and the time passed quickly enough that you felt like you had to make choices, right? And it forced you to have some strategy. And
that's the part I have trouble with, I think, with Stardew Valley. Yeah. Is that it is partly like a strategy game.
Yeah.
And like I don't want it to be.
Well,
my brain rejects that.
You and many Redditors. I mean, he also calls out, he's like, okay, it's 7 seconds. I mean, it's going to take you 50 hours to get through 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? And every time he adds a second, that goes up by like 10 hours, depending on how late you stay up.
Yeah.
So it's this balance between it not feeling like you were totally rushed all the time, and also the ability to make progress in the game, which is a really tricky balance, I think. And it's a particularly tricky balance when you are making a game that is to a certain extent intended to feel cozy. I don't know how much he like intended. Obviously, Stardew Valley came out before the cozy game genre had really taken the industry by the throat.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know how much of that was really intended in making this, but because so many of these games that people consider cozy have these time systems, you're constantly in this tension, which you see online, and which I saw a lot about Stardew Valley reading about this, is that people are coming to these games because they want something chill, but also they want to be really good at the game.
Yeah.
And that's like a really rough balance when time is passing in some kind of real-time capacity, because here's how you make the game chill, dude. Just get less done.
Yeah.
You know, the way for Stardew Valley is to feel chill is to put less pressure on yourself to maximize every second of every day. And look, I'm so sympathetic to these Redditors. I feel this pressure in my real life all the time. But in Stardew Valley, you don't have to get it done. It's like, yeah. And you know, there's plenty of people online being like, hey, just chill out. Just play it chiller. That's all you have to do. But, like, interesting to see people kind of fighting against themselves in what they want from the game.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because, like, something about it being open-ended makes me feel like I need to get more accomplished.
Yeah.
Like, I played and really enjoyed Lightning Returns and the way that it utilizes, like, you have this time limit and days. For one thing, I think that time passes slower in that than it does in Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
Because you have a discrete number of days, so the time differential does not have to be as, like, stringent, right?
Yeah.
But, like, that was fine for me because I felt like I was like, okay, I know how much time I have and I can schedule everything I need to do, you know, like, out.
Yeah.
But I feel like when it's not, when there's, like, so many different things you can do, and so much time to do them, but also not very much time in a day, it's like life.
Yeah.
You know? It like, I feel like he did manage to really simulate life on, like, a small scale.
Yeah.
And that is what's stressful about Stardew Valley for me. That it's hard to, like, think about making progress on things when the days are so short, and also, like, there's so much time stretched ahead of you.
That was deep, Emma.
Thanks.
It's funny how when we're faced with that paradox of choice and limited time, we don't like it.
Yeah.
If only because one day moves too fast.
Yeah.
Are there time-based mechanics in games that you are surprised we don't see more of, or that you would want to see, or that you think are underutilized, or that you think are overutilized?
I think the third Final Fantasy VII Remake should have the same timer from Lightning Returns.
That'd be kind of cool. People would hate it.
They would, but I think they'd
be like, oh no, I wasted 3 days playing Queen's Blood.
Time could stop while you're playing Queen's Blood, you know. You enter the Queen's Blood dimension.
Realistic.
It doesn't have to be exactly like that, but I think that, like, some sort of, like, countdown clock would be interesting in the third game. And they're already pretty much, like, a redux of the 13 trilogy anyway. So, they should do that. Anyway, the other interesting one that we haven't talked about yet that I did play was Unsighted.
Yeah.
Which is essentially like an RPG, but you have, like, every character in the world has, like, a amount of lifespan left. That you can, including yourself. Which you can extend through finding various items in the game, but there are not enough items to go around to, like, all the various different NPCs and also yourself. So the idea of that one is, like, you are trying to complete your mission, right? Complete your objective before everybody in the world has died anyway. And you have to balance that versus doing, you know, the normal sort of side quests and exploring that you would do in these types of games. Which I did think was a really interesting system and one that made you think about interesting choices. When I played, I did cheese it a little bit of I had the same problem in that game as I do in, like, Scott Pilgrim 2D brawlers, where, like, I think I'm on the same plane as an enemy, but actually I'm not.
Whoops. Yeah.
In this one it was, like, platforming. I was like, yeah, I'm on the same plane as that, and
Yeah.
something about my depth perception just doesn't work in those kind of perspective games. So I would turn on, they do have Explorer mode, accessibility feature in that game that like pauses the timers. So whenever I hit like a platforming section, I would just turn it on.
Nice.
Because it would take me probably like 5 times longer than it was supposed to.
Nice.
And I was like, I think it would really kill the experience for me if everybody's dying because I can't friggin' make a jump.
I was surprised you liked this game. It sounded, at least descriptively, not dissimilar from I mean, obviously the genre very different, but the experience of the time did not seem so different from Stardew Valley.
I mean, again, it's discreet though.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that's the difference. Somehow it's stressful when there's not an endpoint for me, which is kind of true for any game. So maybe it doesn't even have to do with the time mechanics of Stardew Valley as much as it is as it's like endless, but not quite in like a just check in for like an hour kind of way like Pocopia is, you know? Yeah. So maybe there's something there also.
Well, I think we've discovered something deep here today.
And also having to like balance games where there's a lot of games where NPCs might have schedules, but less where like in Majora's Mask where like the balancing of those schedules is like the core of what you're doing. So more of that might be interesting, but I can see how it's quite a daunting task.
I guess we're making big open worlds now. Making a small puzzle box seems...
But it's like the balancing of like even Majora's Mask, like if you miss something barely, like that can be kind of like, annoying.
I don't know. We like,
you know, I found Outer Wilds tough too, actually.
I gotta get back to, I gotta try it again. But yes, I agree. It's quite
Although
punishing.
That might be because it's first person.
It's the balance, of course, is yes, it's quite punishing if you miss something, and like how long is your run?
Yeah.
But again, we really like roguelikes now, so I feel like
roguelike.
We're like ultimately these kind of puzzle boxy games really are just roguelikes.
Yeah.
So maybe we want more of them. I don't know. Well, I think time's up. Here at Talk This, ding-a-ling, go back to the beginning if you missed something. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Do you have a favorite way that a game has handled time? Are you an avid time traveler in Animal Crossing-like games, or are you a morally upright citizen? How long would you like your little puzzle box Majora's Mask game to be, and how fast would you like your in-game minutes to pass? If you have thoughts about this or anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This. So in your little weekly rotation, you never miss an episode. You're never late. Just kidding. You can listen to the episodes anytime. But it's nice if you listen to them when they come out. Next week we were talking about games that I remember being like, ooh, fun, but I don't remember what
Crazy
they are.
Taxi.
Right. Ooh, fun.
And Karen.
So look forward to that. And then, unbelievable, 6 weeks of gaming.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
It feels unbelievable because it was 8 weeks of gaming last time.
You're right. The schedule's all thrown off. So the Talk This cycle resets itself. All right. That's it for this week's show. Thanks for listening. Emma, sign us off.
This week, I hope that you make all of your appointments within the appointed hour on or off basis.